Hello, everyone. This is Sheila Harris, President of LAI International, and welcome today to our webinar on the future of retail, or at least retail malls. We have about 170 people that have signed up for this event, and this is the first time that we're featuring LAI and research funded by LEF as our topic of our conversation today for the webinar. So all of you that have given to LEF, thank you very much. And if all of you who are wondering what happens to the funds you give to LEF, well, here's a prime example of one of the ways in which those funds are used to do research. We're also going to be doing something a little different today in that we've got a poll. So keep alert because there'll be a brief period of time when everybody will be able to respond to the poll. Without any further ado, I'm going to turn the program over to Rick Cook, who's the co-chair of our ad hoc program committee. Rick?
Thank you, Sheila. To our LAI guests from around the globe, good morning, afternoon, and evening. At a recent Golden Gate Chapter webinar, LAI President Sheila Harris, who you just heard from, asked the question, how is the consumer responding to COVID-19? And we take up that question today, first of all, from groundbreaking research by Professor Michael Burayidi on the future of the retail mall. Research funded in part, as you heard, by the LAI Land Economics Foundation. And then Rocky McMurtray, VP with Simon Property Group, will provide us an industry perspective. A third of our session is for your questions, so please use the chat function at the bottom of your screen for those. I'm your moderator, Richard Cook. I come from the Vancouver chapter of LAI, and I'm also co-chair of the program committee. One of my clients is a First Nation who in the past 5 years have opened 1.8 million square feet of new retail space. As they are next to Canada's biggest port, they are also home to a surging logistics function, and that includes Amazon. So the First Nation has a foot in 2 camps delivering goods to consumers. My third interest today in today's topic, however, is as a planner, looking to sustain communities and jobs, especially over these next few months. And when I look to retail as a planner, I see the following. Planners love vibrant retail streets, whether it's Mexico City or Tokyo, as shown here on these slides, or similar scenes in your own communities, I'm sure. Planners also love the experience of the anchor of the public square, whether it's Plaza del Sol in Madrid or the Spanish Steps in Rome. Investors and municipal tax collectors love the experience of the vibrancy of the retail, but they also love the AAA mall for its predictable cash flow. No one is really a fan of empty spaces that are a feature of ailing malls. So today, when we're looking at the future of the retail mall, we're looking for insight on whether COVID-19 is a minor or major accelerant in the transition to less retail space. And given LAI's membership, what role might government play either to lubricate retail transitions or to avoid gumming up functioning markets which are undergoing price discovery? The latest statistics on retail trade, excluding vehicle or e-commerce sales, have grown a few percentage points in the last year, which is a welcome relief from dire forecasts of just a few months ago. That number has been confirmed by this morning's data out of the US, where personal spending is up 1.4% in September. This positive aggregate number hides major shifts, obviously, between categories, and may well waver over the next few months, but it's an important underpinning of our premise today that there remains a robust demand for brick and mortar retail. The questions are where, how much, and what types of retailers are malls. Michael Burayidi is a professor of urban planning at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. He's recently completed research into 83 randomly selected retail malls in a 10-state area in the US Midwest. His interest is in why some malls are ailing and predicting the success factors for reimagining malls in the future. His paper is in a second round of peer review, so we're truly benefiting from emerging research. Rocky McMurtray is a regional VP for leasing for Simon Property Group in this same region. He's responsible for approximately 20 million square feet of retail space. Rocky will comment on the main themes of Michael's research. Then we're going to open up to questions. And again, please use that chat function. I wonder now if you could please turn on that poll, Sheila Hamilton, and ask our participants to complete the poll. It asks if you used to work outside the home in an office or work in an office now, what % of workers are at the office now on a typical day? If you just click on it and submit, and we'll close the poll when a number of people have answered the question. Today's session is being recorded and will be posted to the LAI website. And as soon as this poll is finished, Michael, welcome to our global LAI webinar. Thank you. Sheila, do we have enough response? If not, I'd say we can go on.
All right, good afternoon. Oh, here we go.
Perfect. I will share these results.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. And thank you for joining this discussion this afternoon. I'd like to start by first thanking the Urban Economics Foundation for providing the financial support that led to the research I conducted over the last year. Shopping malls across the US, as you all may be familiar already, are struggling. And these three images show shopping malls in 3 different cities in the Midwest, in Sandusky, Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio, and in Muncie, Indiana. As you can see, there is very little activity, few customers in the mall. This could be anywhere USA. There is an estimate that between 20 to 25,000 stores would close this year. Of this number, half or 12,000 stores will be in shopping malls. So this, in addition to the pandemic, is aggravating the problems that shopping malls are facing in the country today. In the last 4 years, some 7,000 plus stores have closed in the US. Many of these are the anchor stores, including JCPenney, Nordstrom, Sears, and Macy's. As you know, the anchor stores are the draw of customers to these shopping malls. And as they close, they impact the health of the shopping malls. Many shopping malls also have co-tenancy agreements so that when an anchor store closes, then the rents that are paid by the inline stores are reduced proportionately. So the closing of anchor stores has a significant impact on the health of shopping malls. So the basic question becomes, why are shopping malls failing? There are several reasons that have been advanced to explain why shopping malls are failing. Uppermost of these reasons is the impact of e-commerce or online shopping. And as you may know, online shopping now accounts for at least 14% of all retail sales in the US. And there are several other factors that explain why shopping malls are failing. But I want to draw your attention to the last point, which is that the US has been over-retailed. What most people do not recognize is that shopping malls started to struggle long before e-commerce. And that is because there were more retail space provided in the US than in any other country in the world. Between 1970 and 2015, for example, the number of malls in the US grew by more than twice the population of the country. In my own research, I compared the gross leasable area per capita of shopping malls in the US to the entire retail space in European countries. And as you can see in this table here, in the US, the GLA per capita is 9.8. In the 10 Midwestern states that I studied and did the research on, the GLA per capita is 9.3. If you compare this to Europe, you see that we have 3 times the gross leasable area per capita than the European countries. And so the struggle of shopping malls is the market response to the oversupply of retail space. Now, the retail sector is important in the country because it not only pays property taxes from the buildings of shopping malls, but also because it employs a large segment of the population. The table here compares employment in the retail sector to other sectors of the economy. And as you can see, the retail sector employs far larger people than the manufacturing and finance, insurance, and real estate sectors. So, for example, the retail sector employs 94 people for every 1,000 residents in the US. Again, significantly higher than manufacturing that employs only 37.5, and finance and insurance real estate sector that employs only 30.1 in the US. So the retail sector is very important. It's usually the entry point for teenagers that are entering the job market. Shopping malls are part of this very important sector of the economy. So what are some of the features of these Ely malls? Typically, as you can see here, this image is taken from Indianapolis. This is Lafayette Square Mall, for those of you who are familiar with Indy. And as you can see, the parking lot has very few vehicles parked in it, and even fewer customers in the mall shopping. So one of the things that you typically see with Ely malls is that they have very little foot traffic, and there is a negative perception among customers of a decline in the mall. Quantitatively, you also see that the occupancy rate falls to 70% or below of all spaces in the mall. And the anchor stores that once were located in the mall either all leave or very few of them remain in the shopping mall. These images here portray what you see when you enter these 2 different types of malls. For an Ely mall, you see that there are very few customers. The storefronts are boarded up. To the right, you see vibrancy in malls that are doing well. Even the lighting itself shows life and significant activity compared to the malls that are ailing and failing. There are different types of shopping malls, and this is important because I selected the shopping malls from the top 2 categories. And so the International Council of Shopping Centers classifies shopping malls by their size and also by their reach. And as you can see here, the top 2 shopping centers are the super regional centers that have a reach of 25 miles and an area of 800,000 square feet. This is followed by the regional centers that have a reach of 15 miles and an area of between 400 to 800,000 square feet. So the malls that I selected for my research were from these two top categories. Now, this table here shows the shopping malls in the Midwest. Again, there are 10 states in the Midwestern region in the US, and the number of malls in each of these states is shown in the table here. We have 351 malls altogether, and as you can see, 37% of all of these malls are ailing or dead, a significant number. So my research goals were threefold. One is, why are some malls doing well while others are struggling and failing? And also, I aimed to develop a model to help predict whether a shopping mall is going to do well and continue to thrive, or whether it's going to fail. And then finally, I investigated effective strategies that are being used by property owners to revitalize shopping malls. So in doing the research then, I selected 83 regional and super regional shopping centers in the Midwest. Again, these were all randomly selected. I then used S3 business analysts to delineate the market area for each of the 83 shopping malls using a 15-minute drive time. And the 15-minute drive time was used because the literature shows that about 70% of a mall's customers are drawn from within this market area. Once the market area was delineated, I extracted socioeconomic data for each of the malls, analyzed the data, and then developed a model for predicting whether a shopping mall will remain healthy or whether it was likely to fail. So this map here shows the location of the 83 malls that were randomly selected for the study. And as you can see, there's a mall, at least one mall from each of the 10 Midwestern states. Here is how the market region was delineated. Again, a 15-minute drive time. This example is for the Muncie Mall here in Muncie, where I live. So once the market area was delineated, I then extracted data for each of the malls. And I used sales volume as a proxy for determining the health of a shopping mall. And so that was the dependent variable. And then there were 13 independent variables, ranging from the size of the mall, the population that lives within a 15-minute drive time, the daytime population, all the way to the number of businesses in the mall and number of employees in each of the malls. So before getting to the regression model, I first ran a correlation matrix to determine which variables were correlated with each other. This was important. That step was important because it helped me to eliminate some of the variables that were highly correlated in what statisticians call multicollinearity. And so after running the correlation matrix and eliminating variables that were multiple collineated, highly correlated, I then ran a regression model. The outcome of the regression model is what is shown in this table. And it shows that 4 variables that predicted the health of a shopping mall. These were the total employment in the mall, that was a positive predictor of sales volume in a mall. Crime rates were shown to negatively impact the health of a mall. So the higher the crime rate in the market region, the lower is the sales volume in the mall. Population change between 2010 and 2018 was shown to have a negative prediction on sales volume, which was a surprise to me. However, I reasoned, and you may argue that's not a good reason, but the rationale that I provided for that is that since I selected malls that were regional and super regional malls, their reach was far wider than the 15-minute drive time that I used in creating the market region. The size of the mall also was a positive predictor of the health of a mall. As you can see in the table, this model explains 77% of the variation in sales volume, and so is a significant model. I also did the principal component analysis to determine the variables and the weights that they provided in predicting the sales volume. 3 principal components were identified as listed in the table here: the physical and socioeconomic size of the mall, demographic change of the market area, and socioeconomic characteristics of the market area. The top 2 variables that had an impact on sales volume were the size of the mall and the number of employees in the mall. Again, these were the 2 positive predictors of sales volume. The other variables, population change and crime, contributed 20.3% to the variation in the model. So based on the analysis then, I developed a predictive model that I used to rank order the 83 malls in order of sales volume, in other words, the health of the mall. So this model is shown in this slide here. Again, we have 4 variables that were shown to be significant predictors of the health of a shopping mall: the number of employees in the mall, the crime rates, again, negative predictor of the health of the mall; population change, negative predictor; the size of the mall was a positive predictor of sales volume. Using this model, I then entered the data for each of the malls and rank ordered the 83 malls in terms and in order of their sales volume. So these are the top 10 thriving malls of the 83 malls that I analyzed. And as you can see here, they have a sales volume of between $3,900 per square foot to $15,500 per square foot. The top ranking mall is the Mall of America, followed by Woodfield Mall and the shops at Northridge. In addition to ranking them by the predicted sales volume, I also looked at the sales volume per square feet. Using that variable, you can see that the shops at Northridge ranked the highest. In addition to ranking the top 10 malls, I also looked at the least performing malls, which were the Ailing and Dyer malls. And these malls had a predicted sales of between $100 to $1,000 per square feet. The least performing mall in the analysis then was the Alton Square Mall, followed by the West Park Mall in Missouri, the Mall of Monroe, Lima Mall, Capital Mall, and all the way to the Antioch Crossing Mall in Missouri. Some of you may have shopped or been to these malls, and I'll be happy to have a discussion with you about your experiences. The final phase of my research was to examine the strategies that are being used to revitalize the shopping malls. And I identified 3 main strategies that are being deployed. These are the adaptive reuse approach, the open air concept, and the experiential approach. And I'm going to discuss briefly each of these approaches. The first one is the adaptive reuse approach. And in this strategy, the former malls are being adapted for completely different uses. In my research and travels in the Midwest, I found that some of the malls are now being used as Amazon fulfillment centers. In some, there are churches that are located there, and educational institutions and medical facilities are also located in previous malls. We here in Muncie, my department has taken over a vacant space in our mall, and we are running our classes in this vacant space starting this semester. So here are examples of the adaptive reuse approach. To the left is the Euclid Square Mall, former Euclid Square Mall. This mall is now taken over, has been sold to Amazon, and is being used as an Amazon fulfillment center. The state public organization, the government, I should say, had to provide $4 million in tax breaks, tax incentives to Amazon to incentivize it to reuse this building. To the right is the former Grandville Village Mall, which closed, and the owner donated the mall to the Mars Hill Church. The church now occupies about 70% of the space in this building. And there's also a Y and a children's play world. That's the name of the business that is located in the mall. The second approach to revitalizing the malls is the open air concept. The traditional mall typically is insulated and unrelated to its neighborhood. It has a few entry points where customers enter the mall into a common courtyard and then access the stores from the common courtyard. The anchor stores are located at opposite ends of the mall, and they are linked by the inline stores. With the open air concept, the mall is opened up to the outside. The common courtyard is removed, and in this place is provided spaces for the public use, whether these are plazas, parks, or in some cases, parking. The shops are accessed from the street level, not from a common courtyard. Here are some examples of this approach. This example is taken from Columbus, Ohio. And to the left, you see the former City Center Mall in downtown Columbus, typical of the traditional mall. In 2007, this mall was purchased by the Capital South, a nonprofit downtown organization. The building was demolished, and in this place, a central park of 6 acres was provided. Surrounding the park are mixed-use buildings with retail on the ground floor. We have offices on the upper floors and housing also. Now retail occupies only about 40% of the buildings that surround the park. The park attracts thousands it hosts 250 plus events every year, bringing people to the downtown who then patronize the shops that are located next to the park. Here are two more images from this example. We have the green space. There is a stage at the far end here, again hosting several events, bringing thousands of people to the downtown. Businesses are encouraged to have pop-up businesses to test out their ideas at the park, and then if they succeed, to move to a permanent location near the park. Another example of the open air concept is taken from Michigan. So to the left is the Eastbrook Mall, or former Eastbrook Mall. As you can see, we have the anchor stores strategically located and linked by the inline stores. There's a common courtyard here. This in 2011, I believe, was purchased by a new investor who created the open air concept here, providing access to the shops from outside, and each of the buildings are independently located. So you don't have to access them from a common courtyard. They are, you can access them from the street level. And the mall is doing very well. At my visit, there's a variety of uses that are taking place in this building. We have retail, we have entertainment, even the US Post Office has its office located here. And the mall was thriving when I visited. Here is an aerial view of the mall to the left, but also the individual shops that are located at the mall now. Again, access from the street level, not from a common courtyard. And the final approach is the experiential model. The most well-known of this approach is the American Dream Mall. And in this experiential model, you still have retail, but retail is one of several uses. So in the American Dream Mall in New Jersey, you have a theme park located there. It's a ski slope. You have a water park and an amusement park, all located in a mall, attracting people to these experiential events and to entertainment, who then shop in the mall. So retail becomes one of several uses, not the predominant use in the experiential model. So in conclusion then, my research has found that brick and mortar retail are going to continue to be a part of the retail business, at least into the near future. The shopping malls that we're going to have will be fewer in number, as many of them are going to consolidate. And so we will have fewer shopping malls, but those that remain are going to be larger, reaching a larger area. The market size is going to be wider than in the previous cases. They will provide a variety of items that are sold in the mall. Experience will be one of the major components of these shopping malls that remain. For the near future, because of COVID, the open air concept provides a better response to the pandemic fears, as people are able to get in and out of the shopping malls, of the stores in the shopping malls. So this is the end of my presentation, and I welcome your comments and suggestions. I think Rocky is next.
Rocky, please take it away from the industry perspective. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, listen, first and foremost, thanks to the entire team at LAI for allowing me to participate in this. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to work with the folks with whom I've had a chance to do so. Let me first start out with a very optimistic viewpoint, which is I believe the platform in which I work today, which is the regional mall platform, has a bright future ahead of it. It just doesn't have a bright future ahead of it for all of us. There are competitors that we have in the environment, in the publicly traded REIT sector in which I work, that will just simply not be able to withstand the pressures that have accelerated under COVID in the very near term last 6 months. I think what you're seeing here is an accelerated Darwinian theory, where part of that is the individual's ability to compete and survive is based on adaptability. In our business, that adaptability is going to be measured in capital and access to capital. So I want to talk a little bit about Michael's last slide here. So the shopping malls reimagined. Brick and mortar is absolutely a fundamental go forward basis for what it is that we have to have as a massive component part of our malls. What's changing is the composition of those brick and mortar retailers. As it was touched on earlier, we have had an unprecedented number of bankruptcies in the retail community over the past really 2 to 3 years, give or take. And I think a lot of that has happened at the lack of innovation, the lack of creativity, and the lack of execution for retailers that the world has just simply passed them by. So again, tie back to the Darwinian theory, they did not have the penchant to be able to adapt and compete in new ways. Let's tie it to the antithesis of that, which is a concept like Warby Parker or Blue Nile Diamonds or Lululemon. So these are all different component part retailers that have different audiences, but they've constantly reinvented what they are, how they're selling, how they interact with their customers, both in a digital format and a brick and mortar format. And I think they've made a compelling offering to their customer in a deep and abiding way. And the brick and mortar platform has been part of that. So I think to go back to the excitement of retail, I think for a number of years in the mall business, it really hasn't been very exciting. You walked in and you knew where the Gap was going to be, and you knew where Victoria's Secret was going to be, and you knew where Claire's and the icing, and those were all great, but they were just the same as everywhere. The history of the mall platform used to have the department stores as a way to draw in customers. That's changed radically. The likes of Sears and JCPenney, who are either currently in or emerging from bankruptcy, Macy's, Nordstrom, Neiman Marcus, Lord & Taylor, the relevance of those anchor tenants to the job they once did in the ecosystem of the malls has changed. And as a byproduct of that change, what has happened is the big draws of that shopping center have changed. In most of our malls today, the Apple store's performance will be greater than that of any of the department stores in the asset, quite possibly even every department store in the asset combined. So again, you're talking about a pivot in retail. Apple's been in the retail business for barely 15 years as a direct-to-consumer brand. So for us, the adaptation of what's happening in retail has gone much more quickly, day by day, year by year, and the trends are going faster and faster. So brick and mortar will always be a part of the retail business, and I think it has to because of a variety of different reasons, but we're also social creatures. The large format retail environments like regional malls give folks a chance to be out there and around other people. Obviously, in today's pandemic, that's a little bit of an Achilles heel, but I think over time that returns to what it once was. To Michael's second point, shopping malls will be fewer in number and smaller, or fewer in number and larger in size. Absolutely believe this one. I think we're overmalled in the US today by probably 2x. I think the one thing you never want to be is the third best mall in a 2-mall market. Your obsolescence is coming at you quickly, and it will present itself, at least now in the wake of the pandemic, probably faster than you'd feared prior to. The consolidation of market, I think, is going to happen in all retail property types. The mall piece of the puzzle, in which I'm a part, I think we have the adaptability to be able to take the best of what retail pockets have and put it all into one geography. So if you think about Michael's slide when he talked about large scale regional malls, the higher the number of square feet at that asset, I think the greater your market reach can be. So then you start to layer on, how do you then assort that asset so that each component part has a synergistic effect on each other. So if I'm showing up to buy a new pair of Air Jordans, maybe I pop into the Guild jeweler and buy myself a brand new Rolex watch. I mean, again, that's the synergy amongst those tenants in a mall that aren't exactly competitors, but they're co-draws. So bringing folks into the mall. The next piece of here, the experience component of malls, absolutely. That is a critical element of what it is that our future looks like in terms of what we have and what we're doing. We've added irreplaceable activities at our malls that would never be eclipsed by an online purchase. For any of you guys that have parents out there, we have a mall in suburban Chicago called Woodfield Mall. It was on one of the slides that Michael put up. There is a Peppa Pig World of Play concept that will be opening likely this year. I think it's going to be a 2020 opening, if not early Q1 21. It has been amazing to watch small kids with their parents in tow take pictures in front of a barricade that is essentially screening the construction taking place behind that. So for us, that's the type of experience that we're trying to offer up as a diversification of draws to the mall. I mean, there can be different reasons why you pop into the mall. I need a new pair of sneakers. I need a new pair of yoga pants. I need a new Swiss made watch. I want to go hang out with cartoon pigs. But those are the things that we're adding into it. And I think the challenge for many of the retail landlords is these are capital intensive changes. You know, Michael spoke to the American Dream in East Rutherford, New Jersey. You have an indoor ski hill, you have a water park, you have all these component parts that are highly capital intensive, really expensive things. But that's another point of delineation between the landlords that'll make it out of this and the ones that won't, the access to capital that we touched on. Tying back to the last piece of this last slide here, for the near future open air centers, we believe, and we have several assets where open air is a component part, and we have multiple assets where open air is the entirety of the asset. We've got a shopping center in Palo Alto, California. We've got another one in Austin, Texas. We've got another one in Brickell Village, downtown Miami, all of which are open air concepts. Those are fewer in number than our enclosed regional mall. But what we've done over time is, as we've changed the paradigm from an old department store that probably is obsolete to now moving into what do we do next with this physical space, open air has certainly been an important component part of that, which we're doing. So, you know, to wrap this all up in a tight little bow, I think those that are able to change, adapt, adjust, improve, those are the retailers that will be the ones that you see going forward. Same thing with the landlord. That will ring true on both sides. The changing shopping habits, I think omni-channel is the buzzword that everybody uses. I think the brick and mortar piece is a very important component part of omni-channel. And then lastly, I think the mall owners, the regional mall owners that have an eye to 5, 10, 15 years out, those are the ones that are going to be able to preserve their market share and then gain market share over time. And that will lead to their survival versus their future obsolescence. So with that, I firmly believe the state of the mall business will be good. It'll be better for a lot of us, and it will be poor for some.
That's a great commentary, both Michael and Rocky. Thank you very kindly for setting us up for our questions. Sheila Hamilton, I'm going to ask if we can do that second poll for a minute here, and I'm going to get a couple of the questions teed up here for our speakers here. Is that possible to do that now, Sheila? Great. So what we're asking here is, what you answered the first question of what your current situation is. Where do you see it being in your community, in your experience in 6 months from now? So basically April of 2021. So we'll give it a minute there. And I think in terms of, we get to this question, Sheila Harris asked the question here of how long is it for the consolidation of the malls to occur? And I guess I'm picking up the same question from media reports from Morgan Stanley Research predicting 20 to 35% of malls will be forced to close. And I emphasize here, due to the pandemic. And I think, Rocky, you phrased it more cleverly at saying that you don't want to be the third mall in a 2-mall market. I wonder if you could both approach that question. Michael, maybe you first, in terms of how long do you think this consolidation process will be taking place over?
I think it will be difficult to predict exactly when this is going to happen. I think it will be gradual and incremental, but I suspect that within the next maybe year or two, that the pandemic is going to impact the health of the smaller malls. It's already doing that. And so they are likely to fail. And in my research, I also found that malls that are in high crime regions are likely to be the first to go. And so as they go, then the other malls may expand perhaps into those market areas that have been vacated. And as they do that, they may then expand, providing more variety. And so I would say the changes are likely to occur within the next year, accelerated by the effects of the pandemic.
Rocky, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, and not to deliberately dodge the specific answer, but I think there are so many component parts of what that timeline looks like. One of them is who owns it. Meaning, if there's note on the property, does the bank really want to foreclose on an asset? Do they want to be able to ride that income into the ground? So that's a part. Is it encumbered? Is it unencumbered? Does it have a higher and better use that can yield a better outcome? So I think the pandemic has certainly accelerated this beyond what was already in place. I think if you look back on March 1 of 19 or March 1 of 18 or March 1 of 17, there was a slope line that just picked up speed on its way down during the pandemic, March 1 of 20. So listen, I think you're going to have a continuation of the culling of the herd. You've already seen that over time. But key ingredients to this one: how many anchors did you have? How many do you have now? And I would say your probabilities of success go down exponentially each loss of subsequent anchors. So that's a tough game to win when you're getting saddled with that much of a real stiff headwind.
So maybe that's a great segue for both of you to the next question, which I think was on our chat function here, is can the anchor tenant effect be replicated by non-retail uses? And I think, Rocky, you spoke to that some already, but if you want to elaborate on that a little bit, and Michael, maybe you could comment from your perspective, what do we do when we don't have the anchor tenants that we traditionally have?
Sure. I'll tackle it first, and Michael, I'll hand it over to you. The answer is yes. I mean, we have actually, in the last 24 months, we've replaced anchor tenants with anchor tenants. So I'll give you an example of that. Orland Square Mall, suburban Chicago. We had a Bon-Ton-owned department store. We replaced it with Von Maur. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, pretty easy. I'll talk about a more exciting one. At Phipps Plaza, which is one of our assets in Buckhead, Atlanta. And for any of you that are listening that know where Buckhead is, vibrant, amazing, great area. So we had a Belk department store. That's fine. Listen, Belk's great. In 2016, we began work. 2017, we were getting pretty close to done. 2018, we made the announcement. We were replacing Belk with a Nobu hotel. For any of you sushi fans out there, obviously there's not too much above the pinnacle of Nobu in terms of sushi. So Nobu Hotel, Nobu Restaurant, Lifetime Fitness, an office tower, and some entertainment uses. So the repurposing of an old department store became this, what will soon be a very vibrant, dynamic hotel, restaurant, fitness offering that will probably draw more people to that spot on a map in a month than Belk would have in a year. So material change, a lot of capital, but again, worth reinvesting in the asset.
I think
Michael?
the anchor tenant, the alternative anchor tenant to the retail, has to be a use that is drawing people to the mall. So it's no longer going to be retail. It can be a public amenity, such as a library. Well, what does the library do? It brings children and parents to the library to check out books to read. But when they come to a library, they get hungry, they have to eat, so they have to patronize the restaurants. And if there is retail nearby, they may stop by to purchase items too. And so I think retail can be one of, but not the key to drawing people to the mall anymore. So we have to look at how the public sector can contribute to revitalizing the mall. So the responsibility should not only fall on the private sector, because after all, the public sector needs the mall to be healthy. In Marseille here, the mall is our largest property taxpayer. The largest property taxpayer is the mall. So we want the mall to succeed. And so we shouldn't just rely on the private sector alone and say, all right, why don't you do what you can to revitalize the mall and make it healthy? What is the public sector doing? And what the public sector can do is to also consider locating some of the public facilities in the mall, and also to draw up and implement plans that support the shopping mall. So if you look at Southgate, in Minnesota, the community has a plan to intensify residential land uses around the mall. And this provides a population that is likely to also shop in the mall, and also improving the infrastructure around the mall. So people can walk to the mall without necessarily having to drive to the mall. So the public sector has a major role to play in helping to revitalize the mall and in recreating draws to the mall that are anchor and non-private in nature.
So let me pick up on a little bit on another thing that you brought up, Michael, in one of your stories of a Reimagined mall that became a church, I think, used. And
right.
I think also in your paper you referenced where a mall failed, sat there for many years, and then Amazon came in, took it over for a fulfillment center. But as part of that, they got I think it was a 10-year or 15-year property tax rebate.
Right.
At the same time, you talk about how important the jobs are in retail versus in some of the other sectors of the economy. Are we missing the boat here in terms of how we charge property taxes to these retail uses that are important to our community well-being? And is there things that some governments have done or should be doing in your mind to maybe preempt this turnover of space and turn it into something that's more viable in the long term through the property tax system?
So I think the government is looking at long term. In the case of the Euclid Square Mall, they're looking at the number of people that are going to be employed there. And so they can get income taxes from the employees. They also, I believe, will now be able to get some long term, the mall will eventually pay taxes. Maybe not in the 10-year time, but in 15 years time, the mall will begin to pay taxes. And so the public sector is looking at the long-term impact of whatever subsidies that they provide to the shopping malls.
So Rocky, this is maybe a softball to someone from industry, but are you guys paying too much property taxes?
A resounding yes. We pay far more than our fair share. Listen, I think the challenge is for any of the municipalities that are out there is the only time where it makes sense to work with the mall operators is when it has gone so far in the rubbish bin that now the phoenix rising from our ashes is the only thing that will provide any benefit. I wish we had a parity of what our taxes vis-a-vis Amazon in an industrial warehouse format would be. Listen, we've clawed to a more level playing field over time. There was the Main Street Fairness Act, which I'm hoping most of the group here understands, where up until a couple of years ago, if you bought something on Amazon, it was an honor system for you to pay sales tax on that product. So it was a competitive disadvantage for us in physical retail. There's still a competitive disadvantage to us in the retail business, brick and mortar retail business, vis-a-vis industrial warehouse space. We're not taxed on the same value. We're not taxed on the same basis. So, there's a component part of it that I'd like to see ours lower. I'm happy to go lower to meet with where they are, but certainly we don't need to pay any more taxes.
Let me turn to multi-use residential. Is that a component of future malls and future open air concepts in many of your locations?
It is. We've even got one that Michael just made mention of just a bit ago, Southdale Center, which ironically was the very first enclosed regional mall in the US, designed by a European architect, Victor Gruen, back in the 50s. We opened up a residential development there called One Southdale Place, 250 units. And that opened about 4 years ago. So in almost all of our massive redevelopments where it merits, there's a residential component being contemplated. Some it's definitive in going, some it's more of an idea of is it market right? So, but yes, it's always a component part.
I was going to say that I talked to some urban planners in doing my research, and one of the suggestions that was made by one of them is for local governments to require Simon Properties, for example, that intends to build a mall to pay long-term bonds to the city, so that when the mall eventually fails, these bonds are used to pay for demolishing the mall and for making it available for redevelopment. And I wonder how Rocky takes such a suggestion.
I would tell you, I think we do a pretty good job of paying a lot of people a lot of dollars for different reasons. I would hate to have to post a bond to hedge against my future failure. One, I don't believe I'll ever fail. And two, it's money out of my pocket today. Listen, I think the best thing to do is maybe they could squirrel away some of the real estate tax that we pay and they can bond it themselves.
So we've got a number of people, and I'm certainly sensitive to this coming from Canada. And when I go hiking these days, I go up in the snow. How do the open air malls work in a Minnesota or more colder climate, especially as we're moving forward.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, the folks in market are as resilient and as adaptable to that market, meaning more climate, than anything. We've got a mall in Duluth, Minnesota, which is about as close to Canada as we can get in our portfolio. We look across Lake Superior, and there you guys are. Outdoor malls, I think people enjoy being outside, even in hot air or more high desert climates like Phoenix, or cold weather climates. I think there's an outside component that everybody has adapted to. Chicago's got two fantastic assets that are both open air. And in the middle of January in Chicago, it is not a pleasant experience to be outside, but yet there's the hardy souls. So I think it's fine no matter where you go.
Michael, your experience?
With the open air mall?
Yeah, in a northern climate.
Yeah, well, and I'm originally from Ghana, so the cold is not something I can tolerate that well. But I imagine for some people, it wouldn't matter at all. I don't think it would be a hindrance, or weather wouldn't be a hindrance to the viability of the open air mall.
Well, we're just about winding up. Sheila Hamilton, I wonder if you could display the results of that second question, and we'll see how people are. So the mode, I think this time on the second question is, looks like it's about 40 to 50% is what people are thinking we're going to be at it in 6 months, and some up at 80, 90%. So I think in general, this number is moving up in the chart. So I think, Rocky, they must have picked up on some of your enthusiasm for the world of retail here, and we'll share these results with everyone on the call in a moment here. Sheila Hamilton, I think you wanted to speak for a moment before we close off on what's happening next with our Sheila Harris, I should say. That's going to on our next topic.
Thanks, Rick. Yes. We will be having another webinar on December 4th, this time talking about using bots to assess risk as we're looking to streamline land use development. So another very interesting topic, one that's been funded with LEF research. And also don't forget, you can make donations to LEF to continue to support this type of research. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks very much, Sheila. And in early February, there's going to be an economic update. I believe it's February 10th with Mary Ludgen who's been presenting for some time to Ely Chapter. That should be a great session as well. I want to say a tremendous thanks to Rocky and to Michael. Michael, your research is great. It's stimulated a lot of thinking here. Rocky, your industry perspective just added life to that research. It's the best of what LAI, I think, can offer in terms of this type of situation. Thank you both for spending all the time preparing for it. We're very, very grateful for your help. And I think we're just about at time for you to get to your 11 o'clock meetings if you're out in Pacific time. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. Have a safe and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thanks to the panelists.